You're 23, maybe 26. You're sitting at a job you didn't exactly choose. You just didn't not choose it. The apartment is fine. The relationship is comfortable. The city you're in was supposed to be temporary. You tell yourself that word a lot. Temporary. You say it the way people say, for now, with the quiet assumption that the real life is somewhere ahead, waiting, untouched. But here's the thing no one tells you about temporary. It has a way of calcifying. In her book, The Defining Decade, psychologist Meg Jay makes a point that stopped me mid-page. She argues that 80% of your life's most defining moments happen before you turn 35, not after, before. The career, the partner, the habits, the identity. They aren't built slowly over a lifetime. They're poured like concrete in your 20s. And concrete, once it sets, doesn't ask for your permission. Most of us walk through that window thinking it's open forever. Think about how many decisions you've made with the word just in front of them. I'm just doing this for now. I'm just staying because it's easier. I'm just not ready yet. Just is a word that shrinks a decision to nothing. It makes something feel weightless, like it doesn't count, like it won't be remembered. The decisions you dismiss as temporary in your 20s are quietly becoming the permanent architecture of your entire life. That's not a warning. It's something stranger than that. It's something most people feel in their bones but can't quite find the language for. This low-level awareness that time is moving differently than they thought it would. That the years aren't stacking up the way they planned. That the gap between who they are and who they were going to be is getting harder to explain away. Here's where things get interesting. There's a specific kind of grief that has no real name. It's not the grief of losing something you had. It's the grief of slowly realizing you're drifting from a version of yourself you never actually got to become. A version that existed only as a feeling, a direction, a pull towards something. And every temporary decision moves you a little further from that pull, quietly. Without drama, without a moment you can point to and say, that's when it happened. That's exactly what Meg Jay was talking about. The 20s aren't a practice round. They're round one. And most people are standing at the edge of the ring, still tying their shoes. So ask yourself something honest. What are you waiting for? Not rhetorically, actually. What specific condition needs to be true before you start taking your own life seriously? Because the answer to that question is almost never something that just arrives. It's something you build, or don't. The surprising part is that this isn't about urgency, in the anxious, panicked sense. It's not about grinding or rushing or crossing off a checklist of achievements before some imaginary deadline. It's about something quieter. It's about the difference between living your 20s on purpose and just passing through them. Most people pass through them. They make safe choices. Not because the safe choice is right, but because it's available. They stay in relationships that have expired because leaving requires a conversation they don't want to have. They avoid the career pivot because failure at something they actually care about feels more dangerous than succeeding at something they don't. They keep the temporary apartment, the temporary job, the temporary version of themselves, and one day, they look up and realize the word temporary has quietly retired from the sentence. And still they wait. There's something almost invisible happening in that waiting. Every day you spend in the wrong city, you're not in the right one. Every year you invest in a relationship that has no future, you're not building one that does. Every version of yourself you put on hold is a compounding cost you haven't calculated yet. This is what the architecture of a life actually looks like. Not grand dramatic choices, but the weight of 1,000 small permissions you gave yourself to stay small. This is the uncomfortable truth underneath all of it. The version of yourself you're protecting by playing it safe, that version is already fading. The protection isn't working. The risk you're avoiding, the exposure, the failure, the uncertainty, that's the exact material a real life is made from. Meg Jay puts it plainly. Identity capital, the investments you make in yourself before 30, the skills, the relationships, the risks you take, they compound. The longer you wait to start investing, the less you have to compound. Time is not neutral. So what does this actually look like in practice? It looks like sending the email you've been drafting in your head for months. It looks like having the hard conversation instead of having it later, which is another word for never. It looks like choosing the harder, truer path over the easier, comfortable detour. Not because it's noble, but because the detour has an end, and it leads back to this exact crossroad. It looks like treating your current decade as if it actually counts. Because it does. More than you've been letting yourself believe. Here's where we began. You, in the apartment that was supposed to be temporary. The job that was just for now. The life you've been borrowing until the real one showed up. That image hasn't changed. But maybe your relationship to it has shifted slightly. Maybe the temporary doesn't feel quite as weightless as it did a few minutes ago. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely don't have an easy answer to it. If you knew that who you are right now is already becoming who you'll be, not someday, but right now, quietly, without your permission, what would you do differently, starting today? If this resonated, The Defining Decade by Meg Jay is absolutely worth your time. And if you want more essays like this one, subscribe. There's a lot more on the way.